We've been rejoined here by Morgan Thompson. Always great to have you here on the anchor desk, Morgan. And the news is a little concerning because it has to do with oil, the supply of oil, and what could happen with your wallet and or pocketbook. The demand for oil remains high, but many countries are falling short when it comes to supply. OPEC producing 40% of the world's oil with a daily output of 30 million barrels. Last month, the International Energy Agency predicted a need to increase that production level even further to accommodate the growing demand. But yesterday, OPEC announced they would not raise their daily output for the second half of 2014. So, what does this mean for the price of oil? I have more than a sneaking suspicion about it. Joining us via telephone, the editor and analyst at Stansberry Research, Jeff Clark. Jeff, thanks so much for being here today on America's Forum.
Great. Thank you for having me.
We're glad to have you here, and it sounds like if they're not going to move up production, well, what follows in terms of supply and demand would be higher prices. Is that what we're looking at?
Well, absolutely. I mean, that's the obvious situation we face today, especially with OPEC not increasing supply and with all the conflicts going on in the Middle East now. I mean, we always have conflicts in the Middle East, of course, but things have heightened a little bit. Now, this is a lot different than what we were looking at around Memorial Day. Right around Memorial Day, most traders were thinking oil prices were ready to peak. Here in the U.S., we had pretty much a record supply of oil inventory, and so folks were looking at the traditional seasonal weakness that comes between Memorial Day and early summer. They were looking for prices to fall in that. We had a different take on it. We looked at the technical pattern on the chart of oil and saw that despite the fact that supply was high, the price remained high. And anytime you have that sort of a conflict, you have to ask yourself, what is it that the price is telling you that the rest of the market isn't recognizing? And we're seeing that today. We're seeing that with OPEC's recent decision. We're seeing that with the heightened tensions in the Middle East. And today we've got a pop in West Texas crude above $106 a barrel.
Now, Mr. Clark, how high are gas prices projected to be for the rest of the year, given this, and given the brand new crisis we have in Iran and Iraq?
Well, gas is a little bit different than oil. I mean, gas prices are obviously quite high, and they're expected to stay high with oil up there as well. Obviously, until the price of oil comes down, you can expect to pay more at the pump. And we're in the summer driving season, and we're heading towards Labor Day at the end of the summer. And typically, gas prices are pretty persistent. And so I expect we'll see, out here in California, we're already at $4.25 a gallon for the premium stuff. Wouldn't be too surprised to see that up around $4.70.
Because typically this is when gas prices are lower, but we're actually seeing the opposite right now.
Well, they do tend to drift down following Memorial Day. That's correct. And that's usually because the price of oil seasonally tends to drift down following Memorial Day. But that's not happening this year. It didn't happen last year either, by the way. We had a pretty good spike in oil from, I think, about $100 a barrel to $110 in July last year. And I wouldn't be too surprised to see us take that out, go a little bit higher over the next few weeks here.
Well, Jeff, when we talk about oil, we talk about the global commodity, and we've also, in addition to what we're seeing most recently in Iraq, there's also been other geopolitical issues that could affect the price of oil. What's happening in Russia and Ukraine, also Libya's oil production dropping some 80% from 1.6 million barrels a day. We look at this, the global commodity aspect of it. How big of a swing here are we seeing? Is this kind of a historic proportions? We could see going from one direction where we thought prices were going to be really low, now going up in incredibly high direction, as you talked about, up over $106 a barrel for West Texas crude.
I'm a little bit fortunate that we're not going to see a historic situation develop here because supply is pretty high. We've got near record inventories here in the United States. Obviously, we've got the shale fields coming online. That's a better long-term situation for us. In the short term, though, I think the reduced international supply and the increased tensions that you're seeing in the Middle East that might contract supply a little bit, that's offset a little bit by the record inventories that we currently have. So I don't think you'll see a historic move, but I wouldn't be too surprised to see us, take out the $110 level we hit last year and maybe go a little higher than that, maybe 112, 113.
Jeff, you mentioned the promise of the shale fields in North Dakota and elsewhere in the upper Midwest, and that brings to mind something else very important, the Keystone pipeline.
Yeah.
How does continued inaction on the Keystone Pipeline figure into this?
Boy, the genius of politicians, I guess. You know, it gets sort of ridiculous. You do have this huge potential there. In the short term, it really doesn't matter. Obviously, if we get an announcement that we're going ahead with the Keystone Pipeline, you'll probably see some celebration and a reduction in the current price of oil. But you know, we're years away from having any of that stuff come online, so we're still constrained by, or the price should be constrained by the high supplies we have currently in inventory and the limited production capacity due to all the conflicts.
Now, Jonathan Fahey, the AP energy writer, he said the dramatic changes in oil production are actually balancing each other out, which is keeping prices relatively stable. How would you reply to that?
Well, I think that's accurate, and it coincides with everything we've talked about here. We're not going to see a historic move. You're not going to see oil somehow get above $120, $125 a barrel, and that's consistent with his thoughts.
Okay.
So I think that works out just fine. It's you can have a stable price, but stable at a high range, I guess is what I'm saying. I don't think you're going to see oil drop below $100 a barrel anytime soon. Certainly not before the end of the summer.
Well, so do you think this is kind of the new normal? The higher prices are just where we are now?
It is the new normal for now, yes. In 3 months, 4 months from now, we might have a different conversation, but yes, for the short-term duration here, I think the new normal is higher oil prices.
Jeff, earlier you bemoaned the prattlings of politicians. As a recovering politician, I have to tell you, I appreciate your insights, but it's kind of tough to say, well, it could be worse. It's not going to get to historic levels, but still it's high. So nonetheless, we appreciate your candid evaluation of the markets and your warning that for the summer at least, prices are going to be high, though as you stated, not at historically high levels.
I wish I could give you better news, but that's where we are. So,
well, we appreciate the straight news and not the spin from you, and your candor is very much appreciated, Jeff Clark. Thanks so much.
My pleasure. Thank you very much.
Hearing Jeff talk about California, where he's based, and the cost of gasoline there, and you think about there's still the big offshore rigs, but he was talking about the shale oil and all the energy available here that still has not been brought online.
I mean, look at Europe. We're so grateful here. You know, we complain about it, but we're really quite fortunate compared to what a lot of Europe and other countries are seeing.
Yeah, it astounds me that people want to be more like Europe and pay higher prices. Go figure. We're coming right back with more on America's Forum.